The moment you've all been waiting for, a polite conversation with Gay Dave and Eiynah. All right, hey everybody, welcome to this special Intellectual Dollar Tree interview. I'm super pleased, super excited to have Eiynah, aka Nice Mangoes on Twitter, the host of the Polite Conversations podcast, here with me virtually. Eiynah, how you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a mother, and so your time is very valuable.
Yeah, well, I don't get much quiet time, so if you hear any screeching and singing in the background, I apologize in advance.
Oh, if it's your baby singing in the background, that's probably adorable. So, there's been a lot going on, like recently in the news that is, relevant to both your and my interests. But I kind of wanted to start off with a bit of a dust up that happened a little bit ago, and I'm not sure if it ever really ended. I remember the dust up about new atheism in the far right, and I just thought maybe we could talk a little, maybe not about the dust up so much because that's just interpersonal stuff, but like, I wanted to maybe give my take on what happened with new atheism in the right and see if see if you have anything kind of to add or any place where maybe you could add to, change, maybe not even change it, improve my understanding or improve what I have to say. My take isn't so much that like people who don't believe in God ended up reactionaries. My take is that a lot of the content creators went that direction because they ran out of room basically inside of atheism to make more kind of edgy content. And so they ended up kind of going down like the men's rights rabbit hole in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I always say and stress that, I have nothing against atheists. I am one myself. And, I really believe in advocating for secular causes. And it's really such a shame that just the whole scene has been so tainted by these right-wing douchebags, really. So I think you're right that it's not the godlessness that is the problem. It's the specific, the direction that this particular scene went. The new atheist scene. It kind of sprang out of 9/11 and that whole commentary in the post 9/11 world, and I guess people were very fired up about talking about this clash of civilizations with Islam, and I think maybe it drew a lot of anti-Muslim bigots in, right? So at some point, I thought that the leaders like Dawkins and Harris and whoever else were actually genuine people who were like, equal opportunity offenders. They hated all religion equally. And, they just started getting a lot of shit whenever they touched the topic of Islam. So that's kind of what made me sympathetic to them, like many, many years ago. And, I just have to give the context that I grew up in a theocracy. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. So you're very, very angry when you get out of an environment like that. And you tend to have like a sort of a reactionary side, an angry atheist side, if you do go the non-believer route. But then you follow these guys for just a little while and you can see through their bullshit so easily. Like they say one thing and do another thing, and you can just see the passion in them when they talk about hating Islam and portraying Muslim immigrants as uniquely, uniquely violent and likely to be terrorists and stuff.
Yeah, I think, I think it also just had, the events and stuff had a white dude problem, because I remember, I forget what year I was at TAM.
Yes, there's that prong of it too.
Yeah, I forget what year I was at TAM.
The whole Islam thing, I think, drew a lot of right-wingers into it. And then it also sort of groomed a bunch of ex-Muslims, to my dismay, to be in that right-wing sphere. I'm an ex-Muslim, and I genuinely came to the conclusions that I did. I questioned religion because of my progressive beliefs and values. And it's shocking to me still when I see ex-Muslims, palling around with Gad Sad or being anti-trans, or, it's like, I thought that you said you didn't like religion for all this bigoted stuff, and then you're back at the same place.
Well, one of the things that I say, and I feel like it kind of pisses people off, but I'm like, I think a lot of maybe the new atheist types were using maybe my queer identity as like a prop or a pawn in their crusade.
100%. I remember the times when Douglas Murray and Sam Harris would talk about how scary it is to let too many Muslim immigrants in because they're homophobic, and how, that was really upsetting to them because, we've moved beyond such things here in the West. And while they downplay the threat of fundamentalist Christians, who are the real people in power over here, and as we can see years later now, those are the people chipping away at LGBTQ rights. And they, when stats came out about like how Muslims in America were actually more progressive on the topic of LGBTQ marriage, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but then evangelicals, like none of these big figureheads commented on that.
Well, I believe when I saw that, the first place I saw it was the left-wing publication Reason. So,
and what did they have to say on that?
Well, they were the first place I saw that study that you're talking about was in Reason, like a libertarian publication. So,
right, ultra woke.
Yeah, ultra woke. Well, the ultra woke Reason. So it's like, and I think that one of the things that I have tried to tell people when I get in these conversations is, I can't really do anything about what's happening in Saudi Arabia or Iran, but I certainly can be kind to my neighbors and the people in my community and treat people here well as they've treated me well generally. So like, that, oh, well, if you were in one of these countries, they'd throw you off a building. I'm like, well, okay, is that a reason for me to hate my neighbor here?
Yeah.
That doesn't track. Like,
no, that's like trying to judge every, if you're judging Muslims by the worst among them, like by ISIS standards, then that's like judging every white person you meet, and judging them as a Nazi, which is completely ridiculous, right?
Absolutely. Some of my favorite people are white. Yeah, it's been rough. It's been weird. And I think there was like a really big inflection point in atheism. And it was one of the first things I actually wrote about in my blog. It's the elevator gate incident at, was it at TAM one year? I forget what it was, what year. I think it was 2013, where Rebecca Watson had the temerity to say, hey, don't hit on me in the elevator.
Yeah, how dare she? And the way that I had heard it, like, obviously you've probably been following this scene longer than I have if you wrote about Elevator Gate, because I only went back and looked up the video that she did just like a couple of years ago, because I can't remember why I did. Maybe it was this new atheism merged with the far right controversy or whatever. But when I saw it, I was really surprised at how mild and like there was nothing in that video that was there to, like, that could have been worth so much outrage, because I had been hearing about it for years, and I don't know what I pictured. I thought it was going to be wild, but no, it was very, very reasonable.
Yeah, it was a fairly long video where she kind of talked about her experience at the conference, and then there was just like a couple minutes at the end where she's like, and guys, don't do this. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's pretty good advice, right? If you're all at a bar, because the context was they were at a bar in the hotel after, everybody was socializing.
And I think she had given a talk and talked about how these types of experiences make her uncomfortable or something like that. And then after that talk,
Yeah.
Someone was in the elevator alone with her. I think it was late at night, and then they asked her back
to the room. Yeah.
To the room.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that you can just say no, but also you have to understand how uncomfortable and frightening that situation can be.
Yeah, because the elevator is like not a place you can leave. If you're gonna flirt with somebody, that's what the bar's for.
Yeah.
Like, that's why people probably go to the bar, is to mingle. And like, if you were at the same bar as this person for, any amount of time, and then you don't even like talk to them until you hit the elevator, you're a creep.
Yeah. And then immediately jump to, hey, you want to come back to my room? No.
Yikes. Yikes. I mean, I don't know. It depending, it's different for me, like as a gay man, if I was at an event and some guy that was, I thought was hot invited me back to his room, I might do it. But but
even if you did that, like in an elevator, the woman isn't going to know that you're gay and you're just being friendly. So,
right.
The same thing would apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Whereas if it's two men and the context is that it's like a gay event where it's kind of cruisy, the whole thing's just very different,
Yeah.
But I'd still be like, why didn't you talk to me at the bar? But it was just so the response to that, it wasn't like, oh, I disagree and maybe you just misunderstood the guy, and he was just trying to, we all want to meet people, and he was maybe just happened to be on the elevator with you and thought you were interesting. The response to that was like, I forget, what did Dawkins, he called her Muslima or something?
No, I think he wrote a response in the comments like, dear Muslima, doesn't matter what you're going through. Like, basically downplaying Western feminism as, silly and frivolous. And when Muslim, just like how they use your identity, Dave, they've used my identity, right? Even though I'm not technically a Muslim woman, an ex-Muslim woman, but a woman from that region. They don't really care about gay rights or women's rights. They just like to use these issues for their convenience to demonize someone else.
Right. And, we're, again, talking about the popular people who came up in new atheism. I think most people who don't believe in God do care about gay rights and women's rights.
Yeah. No, again, want to make it clear. It's this specific scene. It's online movement atheism and the turn that it took, the very clear rightward turn. And I think it comes from two main kind of undercurrents, right? It's that anti-Muslim piece, and then there's that anti-feminist piece. And those two together. And then now, the transphobic issues bleeding into the general anti-LGBT stuff.
Yeah, and that's actually the next thing on my document here. The one thing I noticed too is that a lot of people in what maybe I forget who called it this, the critique sphere, the people who are critical of the IDW types and the like sort of public intellectual galaxy brain types. A lot of those people won't touch the trans issue with a 10-foot pole.
Or they'll touch it and they'll just like have on some transphobe and just not provide any context or pushback and just like sort of sanitize their image. And
and it's weird because on one hand they'll go after Jordan Peterson in a pretty dramatic way,
low-hanging fruit, just
Jordan
like anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson got famous for being an anti-trans bigot. It was the C-16 thing that brought him to everybody's attention.
Yeah.
When people just leave, certain people, a lot of people just leave that out.
Yeah, but now he's like completely unhinged. He's losing it more. Like, we thought he was bad like a year ago, but he's he's angry at random signs and public service messages and don't waste paper towels. He's like, why are the wokes telling me not to use paper towels as much as I want? I don't know. My Peterson impression is terrible.
Yeah, my co-host Ashley, who has calls herself the media one, she does just a bang up Jordan Peterson impression, but she hates that kind of content. She's like, I can't sit through any of this crap. She's like, I gave you my impression. That's all you'll get.
Yeah.
It's weird, and I think again, like the critique sphere, it's got like a straight white dude problem. The entire critique sphere is
yeah,
like straight white dudes.
unfortunately, all of I guess the English speaking internet has that problem. No, like those are the people that end up being the most popular in their content making.
Yeah, I find that, I imagine that if I was less, I don't know, heteronormative presenting, I might, have a little bit rougher go of it as a content creator. But I don't know. That's, it's unknowable. And I certainly don't ever hide the fact that I'm gay. I mean,
Isn't it in your like Twitter handle or something? Yeah.
I always just put something else after it. Right now, it's that I'm more popular than the Forward Party of California.
The Andrew Yang one?
Yeah. Oh God. That guy's like pals with Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying and like Eric Weinstein and those people.
Yeah, and wasn't he like a favorite of Harris too at one point?
Yeah.
Like everyone always like mentions Brett and Heather and the other, like always they think that Sam Harris is like so much better than these other weirdos, these other IDW weirdos, but he's really not. He might be slightly smarter at speaking out of both sides of his mouth, and he's not an utter anti-vaxxer, though he's become a bit of a vax centrist now. Like when he was speaking with Bill Maher on his terrible podcast, they were both talking about how I don't know if I'm going to get another one, or I don't know if I'm going to get the bivalent. I can't remember exactly what it was. A couple of months ago now I watched it, but it was something that made me laugh because it was kind of leaning in the direction of vaccine hesitancy and vaccine centrism, if that's a thing.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things I remember, and I think you probably are going to remember this too. Do you remember when everybody kind of acted like somehow Claire Lehman was all of a sudden a good person because she was an anti-vaccine for a minute there?
So frustrating. It's the same thing, right? It's like, oh, okay, she's a phrenologist, but she's not an anti-vaxxer. Great. There was like two factions of the IDW that were fighting it out in the early pandemic days. It was the phrenologists versus the anti-vaxxers, and, fuck them both, I say. But some people were like, no, yes, great job, phrenologists. You guys are so much better.
Well, it just shows what some people care about, right? Like, I think, you know, and
absolutely.
It's going to be, people are going to call this identity politics, but I mean, I don't think that there are politics that aren't based around somebody's identity or a group identity. I don't like anti-queer bigots. Sorry. And
I'm sorry. If you're being discriminated against based on your identity, then you're going to push back on that.
Right.
And that is going to be identity politics because you're being discriminated against for your identity.
Right. Of course. It's like, well, when you're the, somebody's like, oh, well, this person's just asking questions. I'm like, but I'm the target of their questions. Excuse me. It's wild. It's wild. It's that again, I just think it's, when people don't, it's not that you don't have to experience the, anti-queer bigotry to care about it. My co-host for the Intellectual Dollar Tree is a straight man, and he's, a wonderful person, and, is not, he's, the co-host of my show for a reason. He's absolutely against anti-queer bigotry, and he's always has been, but it just seems like sometimes people it seems like there's this notion that if the conversation is happening in a way that seems civil, that it doesn't really matter what the payload is. Yeah.
That's a real feature of they've stopped calling themselves the IDW, but you know the type I'm talking about. This civility porn, right? They can basically dehumanize anyone as long as they're doing it politely, and that's all that matters.
And that's, I'm fairly
to some
impolite.
People.
I'm actually kind of a giant dick on Twitter, but like,
well, I've been told the same. But
you're way nicer than I am on Twitter, but it's because you're a woman.
Yeah. You know, I can be super calm and I'll be called hysterical.
Yeah. Shrill.
Yes.
They might a bitch. Like there's all, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Catty. Although I'm gay, they might call me catty too. I don't know. There's a little, you know, homophobia and sexism, or especially homophobia against gay men, homophobia and anti-woman sexism. They kind of rhyme a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a
and the misogyny and sexism against women affects like cis het men too. Like the expectations that that they have to maintain like this persona that doesn't feel and that that doesn't like color and certainly won't be seen with pink or I don't like pink, but for other reasons.
I think a guy in a pink dress shirt can look pretty fly.
Well, it doesn't meet my black and blue and dark purple rules.
Well, we're not we'll leave our fashion differences aside. We can still
let's not argue about dress shirts.
Isn't it great that we can have this conversation and not have our disagreement about a pink shirt just derail the whole thing? Isn't it just wonderful?
Yeah. See how open-minded we are? Big-brained even.
So one person I wanted to talk about, and I think the main reason I wanted to talk about it is I think you're the first person I ever heard call Michaela Peterson beef daughter.
Right. Beef daughter is getting worse and worse as well.
She talks a lot more about how she's managing the family business. I don't know if you follow like what she's been doing. Like
occasionally, not too closely. I have my hands full with my mini series on Sam Harris, which I have to get back into. But I missed so much while I took time off because of a family tragedy that I have I don't know how many hours of content to listen to, and then make an episode that wraps up the miniseries. It's called Woking Up. If anyone else wants to check it out, you can find it on my Polite Conversations podcast feed,
which you can see right here.
Yeah.
You go to soundcloud.com/polite conversations, and there's a whole playlist. If you go over to playlists here, you can find Woking Up. And of course, you can find all this on your podcatchers of choice. Also, of course, you're on Patreon.
Yep. I sure am. Nice Mangoes on Patreon. And so that's why I haven't been following anyone else as closely, because I have a lot of catching up on Harris to do.
Well, and what she's I thought for a while that she had kind of more to do with what was going on than they were letting on, and it just turns out that lately she's been saying that she's the manager of the family business, and that makes sense, honestly, because she believes some wild things or whatever, but her head's still screwed on kind of correctly, it seems like. You know what I mean? She seems like she's not gonna do anything wild or impulsive or whatever. And
I don't know. She thinks lettuce can make you depressed for days. And
but I just mean she's not so far gone like Jordan Peterson is. So
like
it's not
yelling
surprising.
at street signs and shit. Yeah, not yet.
She's maybe capable of managing to
but the beef and salt will get to her eventually.
And I don't believe that they're eating just beef.
No. She also said that she switched from beef to like lamb or something. But she doesn't advertise it because lamb is cuter and people would make a bigger fuss or something like that, she said.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just don't believe them, though. I think they would be incredible. They'd be like very sickly, right?
Well, Jordan Peterson is deteriorating right before our eyes.
He actually put on some weight, it looked like, since he got out of the hospital and stuff, but I just don't think, like, how many years are they claiming now that she's been eating just beef? I think she'd be in such poor health. I just don't believe them.
Yeah, I don't know. We can't really prove it, but yeah.
Right, of course.
I don't know if you heard my episode on food and fascism, where I did like this musical intro bit with little clips from these IDW types talking about food. And one of the clips I found was Michaela Peterson talking about how if you feed a baby beef, I think it's beef, or maybe she said meat, as their first ever food, their first ever solid food, their head circumference is larger.
Oh no. Somebody tell Claire. Yeah, it's wild watching her because she's kind of taking that space up that her dad used to take up. I don't know. One of the things that shocked us is we were like during the after show for Intellectual Dollar Tree. This didn't end up on the podcast feed, but we just grabbed a recent video of hers and it was about psychiatric medication. And then we looked up her guest, and her guest was a fucking Scientologist.
Yeah. Did she mention that?
No, the person like we do a whole thing on Thursdays where we do Cults and the Satanic Panic, and the first hour is usually Scientology, so I'm like super familiar with their kind of talking points and their nomenclature and stuff. So we looked up her guest, and her guest did in fact work for a group called the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, which is just an anti-mental health front group for the cult of Scientology. And nobody seemed to care. Like, you know what I'm saying? None of her people seem to care.
The right is like getting way more blatant lately, it seems. Like she even had one of these, I don't know if it was a debate or just a talk, but like on her podcast, it was like sweatshops. Are they bad or good? And she had like someone for it and against it. And it just seems like a caricature, right? Who's going to be debating sweatshops? Why?
And they didn't even like try to like dog whistle it by saying like, oh, you know, hard manual labor is good for your character or what, you know, whatever kind of bullshit they would have said 5 years ago, you know? And by the way, I mean that, you know, not people who do those kinds of jobs are you know, admirable because those are difficult jobs. Hard manual labor. I've never done hard manual labor, and you know, there's no slight there, but it's like calling it's not even trying to dog whistle it and just be like, should we bring back sweatshops is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, I mean, at least it's like mask off, and I think the young people are just not, they're not having it right. At least in America, you look at charts and stuff, and like the only like the group,
I hope so.
Yeah, if you look at a chart like the millennials, every other group tends to get a little more conservative as they get old. The millennials just went the other way. As they get older, they're less and less of them are identifying with the Republican Party.
But it's like the sense you get online is not that, because I don't know, just so many extremely popular, extremely far right content creators now, and how do they get so much popularity if people aren't buying that anymore? Well,
you have to think about it, right? If you have 1 million followers, well, there's 360 or so million people in the United States. So like, you know what I mean? It takes it's
just a small portion. Yeah.
You can have a big following, but it's important to understand that like this isn't like a big following like Michael Jackson at his peak of popularity, right? That's a whole different level of celebrity, or Madonna at the peak of her popularity. So, you know, when you think about, you know, if Michael Jackson's Thriller would have only sold 1 million copies, it would have not been Thriller. So having 1 million followers, I would love to have 1 million followers. I would think I was the shit. But, but, you know, in perspective, that's if, you know, how many people are on the planet that have access to the internet? You know, it's a small slice. But it sucks that these people are able to monetize hate the way that they've been able to. It's depressing.
Yeah. And actually, going back to Jordan Peterson, what surprises me most is that this extremely obvious fundy got such a boost from like the atheists of the new atheist scene. And I wrote about this years ago on my blog, back when I used to blog, something titled like, I don't know, Jordan Peterson and his strange atheist bedfellows. I think when he came on Sam Harris's show, he was like the most popular guest request aside from Stefan Molyneux or something. Just like, it just goes to show who their audiences are, right? Not people who are interested in actually fighting the Christian theocracy that is posing a threat to so many people's rights right now.
Sam Harris, I think everybody's like, oh, he's such a thoughtful guy. Well, if a thoughtful guy might want to take a look in the mirror and think about their audience when their most popular guest request is Stefan Molyneux.
Right. And
that's wild.
Yeah, that was many years ago now, so I don't know who it would be, but he did, I did clip that at some point and put it in Woking Up, so I do know that was a thing.
And there was an incident with where Sam edited out things that Christian Piccolini said. Yes,
and he took Stefan Molyneux's side, and then he went further in a recent interview and said that he did not do it because of the legal threat that he got from Stefan Molyneux. He would have done it anyway.
That's wild, because the only time he had like an anti-racist, not just somebody, he's had people on his show who aren't racist, but the only time he ever had somebody whose project was that of anti-racism, he edited them out talking shit about Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah. And just like, why? He's had, even if he thought it wasn't the complete truth, he could have just put a disclaimer on and been like, well, I don't agree or something, but here's our conversation. Anyway, he's had so many people spouting so much nonsense, so much misinformation and disinformation, so many conspiracy theories about, Great Replacement from Douglas Murray. And he himself talks about the CRT bullshit as if it's a real thing. He has Barry Weiss on, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Barry Weiss is that she had claimed that she was subject to like anti-Semitic harassment in the New York Times Slack. And then she, like, people like above her, like HR and management was like, can we get examples of this? And she never came up with the examples. And then they combed through the Slack to try to find it, because they were, you're running the New York Times. You don't want that shit. You don't want that shit in your communication, period. It isn't about Barry Weiss. And they couldn't find it. And it just so happened that the CEO of the New York Times had retired right after Barry Weiss quit. And she went on Kara Swisher's old network, Recode, before Kara moved on. And it was on Peter Kafka's show. And he just straight up said that, we couldn't find this. We searched for, this as much as, as best we could.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a clip of it. I can send it to you after if you remind me. I actually put it up. I put the clip of it up on my Facebook, our Facebook page, because, well, it was a convenient place to put a video that we were going to run on our show, because we didn't want to run the whole podcast. We just wanted a slice of it.
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, and I don't know why nobody ever kind of followed up on that, because that's a pretty nasty thing to accuse your former employer of.
Yeah.
And especially if it wasn't happening. And I don't think it was, because I don't think they wouldn't tolerate that shit at the New York Times. I don't think.
Well, I don't know. Like, people can say things in private chat, and like, it doesn't have to be obvious to everyone at the moment. But if you're saying that they looked through and didn't find anything, and she didn't come up with anything to show, then that is quite strange.
Or maybe not so strange if you
know Barry Weiss.
Yeah, maybe not so strange. And my other favorite thing is that she was starting a university, and I guess now she's not.
I don't know what happened to that.
Oh, I made an image of it. It was like it had like calipers next to the University of Texas logo, and then it said like under it, if the staff is good enough for the kids at Epstein Island, they're good enough for your kids.
Oh gosh.
That got shared around a lot, but I feel like maybe it was a little too on the nose there, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. But like, what happened with that? Like, they keep coming up with these new grifts, and then it just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, there's also that like foundation against intolerance and foundation against intolerance and racism, FAIR. And that's like a who's who of anti-racists. It's like what one of my former co-hosts would call it, a who's who of who can go fuck themselves. It's like Pinker. It's like all the race and IQ people are in there, like Pinker and Haidt, and I don't know if Harris is involved, but I bet he No, I don't think so. But what's his name? The other Shermer, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I brought it up with Chris from Gurus, and I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think there's an I got accused of sexual harassment or sexual assault to now I'm a right-wing asshole pipeline?
Yeah, I think there is somewhat, because if they feel like the left will hold them more accountable, then they turn to people who don't seem to care about that stuff, and guess who that is? Just like Silverman. Remember, he used to call himself a feminist, and now he's like an MRA hardcore and a pretty open racist.
Yeah, I think he immediately went running to Sargon of Akkad after like the stuff came out. I'm unsure about the Silverman stuff. It wasn't as publicized, I guess, as the Shermer stuff. But like before,
no, I think it was more like there was a big piece in, was it BuzzFeed News and something else? I don't think there was any like official piece aside from a couple of blog posts about Shermer. I could be mistaken because again, that was before I was following this scene.
Yeah, it could have been that. It could have been that. Like where I was, in this, like I was hearing more about it or whatever because I was going to like the cons and stuff at the time, and so
it's interesting you asked me about that merge thing, that new atheism far right merge thing. So let me just explain for anyone who isn't familiar, is that this whole like podcaster drama happened on Twitter, because there was this like article written in Salon called New Atheism Merge with the Far Right. And I thought, among not right-wing atheists, it was like an understood thing, right? And so then when I see like some of these left bro podcasters trying to defend New Atheism's honor, I was like, well, firstly, it's completely factually inaccurate. And what are they getting out of this, right? So I put out like my own episodes, just sort of detailing and listing the stuff that I have seen. And there's just like mountains of examples of new atheists merging with the far right. There's just so much. It's ridiculous that anyone that isn't right-wing would try to deny it. So anyways, that caused a lot of drama. But now recently, that whole circle, I'm not going to name names, but they're embroiled in their own scandal because there was like some people that came forward with accusations about one of the co-hosts just being very inappropriate with people in different degrees, and and it turns out that a bunch of these guys knew, like these supposed feminist guys that are supposed progressives of the atheist scene that have done like content about Me Too and talked about the nuances, and and they had been covering it up since 2017, 2018, and continuing to profit off working with someone that is a sexual predator.
It's again, I just think it's like the white dude bro problem.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I would hope that it isn't a given that white dude bros are okay with covering this sort of stuff or profiting off of this sort of stuff, especially if they claim to be feminists, especially if they put out content about Me Too.
Well,
Yeah.
it's more like when you get when you get a scene that's all who's there and that's all who's popular is you end up like this is just like a pattern. It's not, it's not nothing intrinsic about being a white dude, bro. I think it's more like when you get a critical mass, you're going to eventually have some people in your group or whatever who can't behave themselves, who are shitty to other people. And it's just, maybe for some people I don't understand it myself, but I guess it's more important to protect the group because maybe the group's making money or the group's
that's
clout,
the thing. The group is making money, and also with the whole argument over MergeGate, the investment in the atheist identity is stronger for some people, so they feel threatened if like the atheist scene is criticized, even though people say again and again it's not the godlessness that is being criticized, it's this particular movement that has turned right wing, or maybe has always been.
Right. Maybe it wasn't noticed because for a long time just being openly against religion was like almost edgy. And so I think a lot of people were maybe for gay rights because they didn't think religious people were.
Yeah.
And so it was like more a tribal thing than because knowing who the out group is tribalism as much as knowing who the in group is. And so if the out group is religious people or religious fundamentalists, then you're going to side with gay people on issues of gay rights. But that doesn't mean you actually care about gay rights. But now look who's
siding with the fundamentalists, calling everyone in the whole LGBTQ umbrella like too woke or too fragile or whatever, while their rights are being stripped away.
Right. That's what's happening now. Yeah. And it's I guess it's just not surprising if you think about it from the idea that we were just a prop.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
They'd turn on, they didn't care about gay rights. They just wanted to piss off the religious people. And a good way to do that was to make the right noises about caring about gay rights.
Yeah. Yep. Same with, women in Islamic theocracies when they undermine feminism at home.
Well, they just, the talking point is that feminism here has gone too far or whatever, but I don't even know what that means. It's like, I'm like, well, you try to get examples and they just give you examples of somebody who's mean to them on Twitter. And I'm like, well, it's not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or some book they don't like that someone wrote. I'm like, well, okay, I've seen a lot of books I don't like that. Like, so what?
Yeah. There's that, what is it called? White fragility.
Yeah.
And there was someone who tweeted out like a picture of someone who wrote a very angry note or like a post-it, like, and stuck it on the bookstore on this pile of books, like the white fragility books. It's like, what better example of what the title is talking about?
Yeah, it's just been a weird journey through like secularism, like for me, it was like atheism, then elevator gate happened. Then I saw that some of the atheists started to like merge in with the men's rights activists.
Don't you dare say merge. It's a forbidden word.
Well, but then Gamergate happened, and like a lot of the atheist content creators were now doing Gamergate shit about Zoe Quinn, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, that's another thing that I only caught like the tail end of and didn't quite understand fully at the time, but yeah, it's really bizarre, especially as a person coming from an extreme theocracy like Saudi Arabia, where we're forced to wear like black cloaks, or we were when I lived there. I think things have relaxed a bit since then, but only on the surface. But when you find like movement atheism online, you suddenly think, oh my gosh, these are my people. I'm free to say what I want. And, these are people that are going to think like me. And no, it's like, it's such a hard thing to come to terms with, that you're surrounded by the same kind of bigots, again, just with like better vocabularies and more sophisticated ways of sneaking that bigotry in.
Well, I think it eventually became a clout chase, and that's just never good for a community ever, when the whole thing just becomes a clout chase. Because I think, there were people who were clearly at the top who, in some cases didn't even need the atheist community. Dawkins, Sam Harris, Michael Shermer, they were all had careers, but there was like a level under there where people were just chasing clout to try to like gain popularity. And I think that those people were the ones who kind of led the shift into like men's rights activist stuff, and then the people above them eventually kind of followed. Although to like maybe Sam Harris's credit, he hasn't had any like the boy problem kind of people on his show or anything yet.
What do you mean?
Oh, like the boy. I don't know if you know about this. There's this like kind of rebranding of the men's rights kind of movement, the manosphere, where they're saying, well, now actually we just care about the problems of men and boys. We're not anti-feminist.
Oh, well, no. I mean, he had Peterson on. Peterson is incel king.
Yeah, I guess he's the one exception. He's I call him incel Ron Hubbard.
Douglas Murray. He's also like, that's not his main focus, because he hates immigrants more than he hates feminists, I suppose. And
that guy's like one of the most mask-off racist people you can find, and I can't...
With a posh accent, yes.
Yeah, it's very posh racism. It's all very posh.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if he's old money, or if he puts that accent on. It'd probably be trivial to look it up, but it'd be funny if he like is like not from like a posh background, and he just puts that accent on to seem smart or something. That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume that he went to some posh private school, but I have to say I haven't looked into that aspect.
I don't look too much into the personal lives of these people, actually, because they're my problem with them.
What they're saying is really enough to...
Yeah. My problem with them is their statements on the record as a public figure. Yeah.
And how they try to weasel out of their own statements. I didn't say that. I didn't mean that.
Yeah,
no,
that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. You intentionally misunderstanding me, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They all do that. And the other thing, and maybe we can, as we get into the talking about what appears to be the collapse of what used to be the IDW, one of the things that a lot of the Galaxy Brain people do is they're like, well, this person was nice to me, so I don't understand why so many people think they're a monster. They were so cordial to me when I spoke with them. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like back when I had Sam Harris on my show in 2016, I think it was, I told him in detail what my issues with Dave Rubin were, what my issues and concerns about Gad Saad and Douglas Murray were. And yeah, he had nothing but excuses. No clear answers, just like dodging what I was saying. Even about Tommy Robinson, really.
It's this idea. One of the guys from the Q Origins project was on. We were talking. I don't know how it got to like intellectual dark web figures, but he was just calling it. He's like, this is just academic window dressing, and people see that, and they think that the people they're listening to are smart, nice, interesting, funny, on point. And he's like, but all they're doing is just dressing up their bad ideas with academic sounding words and concepts that they might very well be from academia, but aren't necessarily, being applied correctly or at all.
IDW / heterodox sphere is about, right?
Yeah, that's
and
their
money. Project
and money.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, so I had told Harris about all these people, and he just made excuse after excuse after excuse. And then, fast forward a few years, and he's finding some of the same issues with these people, and he's finding out that they're not very nice people at all, because now he's gone too far for them, just because he's anti-Trump, He still, buys into all the right-wing nonsense, the anti-woke bullshit, the anti-trans bullshit, the anti-CRT, the anti-racism, but you know, he's anti-Trump, so he's pissed them off, and now he's seeing that they're not so great after all.
Your conversation with Sam Harris was actually the piece of content we went over for the very first episode of the Intellectual Dollar Tree.
I do remember that you said you were going to do that, and I did listen. It was great.
Yeah, the co-host for that one actually passed away one night after leaving my studio. R.I.P. Joe the breadboard baker. He'd be so proud though of like what we've done with the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We actually chart sometimes on Apple Podcasts, which is stunning.
Oh, nice.
Although our reviews are all 1-star reviews going, you don't understand the people that you're criticizing. It's exactly what we want the reviews to be. So as the former kind of IDW crumbles and starts to faction off, I think what you'd said about that being what the phrenologists versus the anti-vaxxers is like the best way to kind of describe what's happening as it factions off. Do you think any of them that their 15 minutes of fame is almost up?
No, because they find like new circles. Like if they become more extreme, they find a more extreme audience, you know? I don't think that it's crumbling in the sense that it's just going to cease to exist. I think it's just I guess changing, and there might be some of them might be going their own ways, but they will have this common thread of bigotry and bigotry sanitization, and they'll just call themselves something else or whatever, you know. They're going to be the same kinds of people still.
I mean, you had already brought up one of the rebrandings is like they started talking about heterodoxy.
Yeah.
And that's just the same people.
Yep.
And it's the same group of people who all believe the same thing. So it's an orthodoxy of its own. It's not.
Oh, yeah. And if you go against what they say, they're going to turn on you. Like, what's his name? The trigonometry guys turned on Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Constantine and Non-Oliver.
I don't even know what the other guy's called, but I think, one of them is called Constantine.
Yeah, and the other guy, I don't know his name, but we just call him Non-Oliver.
Okay. Does he look like John Oliver?
No, but he's trying to do a John Oliver impression. It's pretty obvious. Or maybe he doesn't know that that's what he's doing, or maybe maybe my anti-UK bias is showing.
I haven't seen enough of their content really, but that interview was interesting because what Sam said was really, really dumb, and he's tried to walk it back like a few times, claiming he doesn't care that the right's canceled him over it. But like, really, when you know there's so many conspiracy theories out there about Hunter Biden and the laptop, and then like the Pizzagate type shit, like it's actually dangerous to go there and say like, oh well, I don't care if he had kids locked up in his basement or something. He said something really dumb. I don't know. Maybe it was something along those lines. Maybe you can splice in a clip or something.
Yeah, because he could have just said no. I don't care. Hunter Biden wasn't running for president. There was no indication that he was going to be part of the president's team in the administration. So, and plenty of people have problems in their families with drug addiction and, members of their family who, break the law. He's like, I don't know if that should, that you could just go, you'd be like a compassionate person and say that you don't care about it because, it's just the president's son and, you can't control people. But instead he was like, oh, I don't care if he's doing a Pizzagate. It's like, oh, you idiot.
And then, of course, he energized like people like Tucker Carlson. It was like, oh, look, he admits. And it was just so ridiculous. The dumbest way to push back against that, of course, trust Sam Harris. And then he also admitted in that interview, every time I write something about Harris or put a episode out about him, I get like a bunch of people in my replies always saying, well, you clearly don't know anything about Harris. Did you know he's anti-Trump? How can he be right wing? Do you know how anti-Trump he is? I bet you've never heard any of his anti-Trump stuff. Like, yes, I have. And I've actually covered it. And the very unique ways in which he is anti-Trump, defending on the one hand from any accusations of racism, making the bar very, very high, and then also saying, yeah, I know he's a racist because I've seen a video, I know that a videotape exists of him saying the N-word, but still, the ways in which, the reasons that the left called him a racist for, like, he's not racist for those reasons, or, like, he does a lot of this both sides of his mouth shit. And he admitted in that trigonometry interview that actually he agrees with a lot of Trump's politics and a lot of his policies and a lot of, that's the thing that I always tell people. It's not that his politics that he hates Trump for. It's because he thinks Trump is a buffoon.
Right.
And because he thinks Trump, energized the wokes and legitimized their fears.
Right,
and concerns.
It's form. He doesn't like the form, basically, of Trump. He doesn't like the aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's not the policy. It's not the ideas. It's the aesthetic. It's very uncouth to run around calling your daughter a 9.5 to anybody who will listen to you. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
That's the stuff that fucking puts me off too. But it's like part of a broader problem with his character, and that's why he shouldn't have been the president.
And his bigotry in politics.
Yeah. Well, that's his character, right? Those are and that's these people. God, you know what them and their fans really hate it if you say anything about the character. Like they're like, engage the ideas, and you're like, well, after hearing enough bad ideas, I'm going to start making some judgments about your character. Sorry, buddy. Like, what we do all the time.
Like, how many ideas do you have to engage before you can conclude that this person is a pretty terrible person? Like, you can't just endlessly engage each idea in a vacuum.
In fact, they don't want you to do that either, because then you're taking it out of context.
Yeah, of course.
You can't win, and it's because it's cult of personality stuff.
Oh yeah, first it's like you don't even know because you haven't listened to every single piece of content they've put out, or it's like you're obsessed because you listen to every single piece of content that he puts out.
Well, it's just cult of personality stuff. It's most people who listen to Sam's podcast aren't going to come and bother you, or more often you than me. I don't get, I don't know, maybe even a tenth of what you get, but like me and Hunter are way more nasty than you are. You know what I'm saying? Like we're like the content of our podcast, even, it's pretty nasty. We're not, approaching the discussion in good faith. In fact, the tagline of the podcast is that we've entered the marketplace of ideas in bad faith. But I'm just not a woman of color, and I'm, if I was maybe more gay presenting, maybe I'd get more hate. But I don't know. I think they just, I'm like a 40-something-year-old white guy, so maybe they don't think that I need to be put in my place.
Well, specifically with ex-Muslims, right? They were such a convenient tool for new atheists and their fan bases. And because I didn't fit the mold, or maybe it seemed like I was going to do that for them at some point, and then suddenly I didn't, that was very upsetting for a lot of people.
The nerve to bring your own ideas to the marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been weird. It's been weird, and I do see like the things people say to you in your comments, and I'm like, why? What is wrong with these? Like on Twitter, I'm like, what is wrong with these people? I don't even want to know what's going on in your DMs. Some of these people probably get massively pissed off at you and decide to DM you too. Yeah,
I just like delete and block.
Yeah, that's good, because like I don't DM, like, why would you DM a stranger to scold them? Like that's bizarre behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I get DMs, emails. Yeah.
We get emails every so often about the show, and usually they're not very nice, but But it's, I just think it's probably, pales in comparison to what you get. And I think it's just because you're a woman of color and from the middle, born in the Middle East. And like you said, their expectations are that you were going to be Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and you're not.
Yeah.
She's gotten worse too. My God.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And she's mean too. I mean, I'm mean. Whatever. People are like, you're so mean on Twitter. But I mean, she's like, it's different. I don't know. I just feel like I have my fucking. I just feel like I'm aiming the right direction most of the time when I'm being mean. And she's just. It's just weird. It's weird because she'll just pop up out of nowhere and just say like horrible things, and then like she'll be gone for another 6 months or a year, and then she'll pop up again and just say horrible things again. It's like, what are you
and just
doing?
really unintelligent. Like, remember when she compared like I guess BLM or wokeness in general to ISIS? And some of the points she had were like so beyond stupid. Like, you see, they both do chants. One chants BLM and the other chants Allahu Akbar or something like that. I don't remember. It was that level of comparison.
But like, so does everybody who goes to church. They chant things in church too. Like Catholics, that's one of the things about the
people
Mass.
Chant things in sports, and it's just, yeah.
Well, I mean, sports fans are in fact like they're like the Mujahideen. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that, but I am not a fan of sports, so I will. Don't cancel me, anyone, please.
I like the spectacle of going to like big sporting events, but I don't. It's not that I like sports. It's that I like I like the spectacle, the density of the people, like the energy of the crowd and stuff. But yeah, I don't really care that much about sports. So I think we'll maybe put a fork in it for the podcast part here. We definitely continue on a little bit for my patrons and for my people who are going to check it out live on Wednesday though. After, but before we get out of here, if you reintroduce yourself, as I didn't even as being a bad host, I didn't ask you to do very properly at the beginning, and tell people where the best place to find you are.
Okay, I am Eiynah, known as @NiceMangoes on Twitter or @NiceMangosArt on Instagram. I'm barely ever on Instagram, but maybe if I got more followers, I might be there more often. You can find me on Patreon. You can find me on wherever you listen to your podcasts. I do the Polite Conversations podcast, where the conversations are not always so super polite.
Well, thank you again. It's been a goal of ours since we started the Intellectual Dollar Tree to have you on, and I'm glad we were finally able to do that.
Yeah, me too.
If you like what we're doing at Echoplex and aren't into Twitch, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/Echoplex. For $5, you can get every show from beginning to end sent to you as an MP3, even the stuff we bleep out because it's too spicy for Twitch. Echoplex would not be where we are today if it wasn't for the community support we receive. Find out all the ways you can support the show at echoplexmedia.com/support.